Welcome back to Heroclix Clash New Player Orientation. Today we're going over Chapter 6 of the 2023 Heroclix Comprehensive Rulebook. Chapter 6 is Important Game Terms and Concepts. Heroclix has many important game terms, concepts, and minor rules that will be explained here. 6.1 PAC Powers and Abilities Card. The Powers and Abilities card is commonly called the PAC, pronouncing each letter separately. It has a listing of all standard powers, all inherent abilities, all improved abilities, all key phrases, and many other helpful things. The PAC is the key reference tool that most players will need for most Heroclix games. 6.2 Friendly and Opposing. Characters and other game elements on your force are friendly to all other game elements on your force and are friendly to themselves. Game elements on your opponent's force are opposing to all game elements on your force. Some game effects may change a game element from opposing to friendly. If that effect ends, the game element returns to being friendly to the force it was friendly to before the game effect took place. 6.3 Adjacency. Squares on the map that touch each other, including only through their corners on a diagonal, are considered adjacent. Most squares have 4 adjacent squares on their sides and 4 adjacent squares on their diagonals for a total of 8 possible adjacent squares. 6.3a Adjacency and Game Elements. Adjacent game elements are those occupying adjacent squares. A game element is never adjacent to the square it occupies or itself. 6.3b Adjacency and Terrain. Terrain can affect adjacency. Squares are not adjacent if they are on the opposite side of blocking terrain, including walls, or on opposite sides of an elevated line. 2 squares touching on their diagonals are not considered adjacent if the other 2 squares touching their intersections are blocking or different elevation. 6.3c The term next to. The term next to is a term that refers to 2 squares on the map that physically touch, including at a diagonal, but may not be considered adjacent. Game elements next to each other are those occupying squares next to each other. 6.3d Regardless of adjacency. Some effects state they will work regardless of adjacency. This effect would normally require being adjacent, but this special version does not. 6.4 Success, Fail, and Listed Effect Rolls. Some effects will cause you to roll a d6 and will show you the range of success results, example 5 through 6, and what the benefit to succeeding is. These are known as success fail rolls. Any result not listed in the success range is a failure. The maximum result of a roll is 6, and the minimum result is 1. Regardless of the effects that increase or decrease the result, a roll of 6 is always a success, and a roll of 1 is always a failure. Other rolls might show a list of possible effects based on the roll result, example 1 through 3, Effect 1, 4 through 6, Effect 2. These are listed effect rolls. Like success fail rolls, the maximum result of a roll is 6 and the minimum result is 1. But because listed effect rolls don't have a success or fail state, no result is always considered a success or a fail for them. 6.5 Resolve. When an effect resolves, it means that all necessary steps have been completed. There are 4 types of effects that can resolve: attacks, moves, actions, and triggered effects. Passive effects don't resolve. 6.5a Immediately resolves. When an effect says that an attack or move immediately resolves, you skip any remaining steps in the attack or move sequence, respectively, and it's considered resolved. That character is not considered to have attacked or moved. 6.6 Healing. Some effects allow a character to heal. When a character is healed, that character's player clicks its combat dial once for each 1 damage healed, in the direction of decreasing click numbers. A character can't be healed beyond its starting line that game, onto a KO click, or a click otherwise without any combat values. A character is not considered healed by an effect unless its dial is clicked. 6.6a Healed. While a character is not considered healed unless its dial is turned, a character can still activate or be affected by effects that allow it to heal even though its dial won't be turned. Note that effects that trigger off a character's healing or being healed require that the dial be turned. 6.6b Healing past a starting line. Some characters have effects that allow them to heal past their starting line. This healing is not limited to just crossing their starting line, but while they are past their starting line as well. While that character is on a click past its starting line, it can't be healed by any other game effect except the one specifically allowing it to do so. 6.7 Modifiers. Modifiers increase or decrease a combat value by a specific amount and are summed up when needed to determine a combat value. Modifiers use the word modify or modifies and may be abbreviated as combat type plus / negative. Modifiers always involve adding or subtracting and only apply to combat values. Modifiers only apply to combat values and not any other values. 6.8 Replacement values. Some effects substitute one value for a new numerical value. This is a replacement value. When a replacement value is divided or multiplied, those are also replacement values. Replacement values always set other values to specific numbers or multiply or divide a value. 6.9 Calculating combat values. Combat values are calculated only when needed. They are recalculated each time they are needed. Replacements and modifiers aren't applied until a value is calculated. Anytime an effect refers to a combat value, speed value for example, it always means the current result of calculating that character's speed value. To properly calculate a combat value, use the golden rule of replacing, then modifying. 6.9a Modifiers and replacements during attacks or moves. Unless a duration is specified, modifiers and replacement values only apply to a character until the move or attack, or in some cases the action or triggered effect that uses the modifier or replacement, resolves. 6.10 Calculating other values. Values that aren't combat values are calculated the exact same way as combat values, with the one exception being that only combat values have modifiers. When calculating a value, effects that increase or decrease the value are used in place of modifiers, but these are not considered modifiers and are not limited by the rule of 3. Examples of these values are damage dealt, damage taken, or the result of a die roll. 6.11 Rounding. At any point in the calculation of a value, if you have a fractional value, usually caused by having a value, immediately round up to the nearest whole number. 6.12 Printed values. Some effects refer to a character's printed combat values. When an effect looks for a printed combat value, it's referring to the combat value that is physically printed and currently visible on a character's combat dial. When an effect instructs you to use a printed combat value, you may not apply any replacements or modifiers to that value.